Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the meeting of the Police Overview Committee. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to view the meeting using the link on the agenda. We'll move to item 1, which is apologies for absence, and we have Councillor Peggy Mallock, who is being substituted by Councillor Roy Aldcroft as her substitute. Struggled with that then. Item 2. Does anybody have any disclosable pecuniary interests? Members are reminded that they must declare their disclosable pecuniary interests and other registrable or non-registrable interests in any matter being considered at the meeting as set out in Appendix B of the Members' Code of Conduct, and consider if they should leave the room prior to the item being considered. Does anybody have any? No? Okay, we'll move on to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. So if we consider the minutes of previous meetings, first of all, the 28th of April 2022. Is there anything anybody wishes to pick up on that? No? Can I have a proposer and a seconder for those minutes? Thank you. Paul proposed and sorry. I've got my distance glasses on, they're not helping me at all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Minutes of 12th May 2022. Can I have a proposer? Unless there's something to pick up. Yeah.
Yes, Chair. First of all, I can't find them. I can see the minutes. We've got a document which has got the April minutes on it. And it says it has both, but it doesn't say.
Yeah. So do you want to comment?
Yeah, they were in the original when we first published the agenda back last week. The ones that came out yesterday were with the 12th April minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking from the agenda page. I'm on the
On the public website.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the.
Julian, if you click on see where it says the title for that item rather than the appendix.
Yeah, I think there's actually minutes of the meeting. That PDF 202 is only a one-page document.
See where it says minutes of previous meeting PDF against 3 on the agenda.
Sorry.
It's on that heading line.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm clicking on. Yeah.
Oh, election papers of 12th May.
It's one page, June. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's only one page. It's just a couple of items of business: election of chair, election of vice chair.
Well,
That was all it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like the end of full council last time.
Okay. The reason I was querying is because I was trying to chase down, because I'd asked the members a question at a previous meeting about the use of bailiffs, and I followed it up with a following question because there was no answer about the number of times bailiffs have been used. And I can't find that, but I'll chase that down separately.
Yeah. Maybe we could make sure that answer was given for Julian, please. That'd be very grateful. Okay, so can I have a proposer and a seconder?
Question, if I can, Chairman.
Yes.
And that's on the April minutes. Can I ask that you or your officer actually, there is an action there which hasn't been followed up. Could that be followed up, please?
Okay, that's all right. But next time, if you could say when we're actually on those minutes, I'd be very grateful.
Yeah, but I'll propose those minutes.
Thank you very much, Roger. Do you have a second? Thank you, Julian Dean. We'll now move on to item 4, public questions. We have no public questions, and we now move to member question time, item 5. If you'd like to ask your question, Julia. I should say your Councillor Julia Evans. So if you'd like to go ahead.
Since elected, many of my correspondences with constituents in the Radbrook division of Shrewsbury has been about developers not adhering to planning. This has come in the form of raised metalworks and unfinished roads for more than a year, landscaping and children's play areas not constructed, block drains from builders' debris, speed restricting plateaus non-existent, and in one case, too high for cars, roundabouts with restricted views and too small, being constantly damaged by larger vehicles then repaired and process repeated. Trees left to die before and after planting. Disabled and vulnerable residents left with high heating bills due to doors not sealing properly. Wildlife mitigation not carried out in the form of holes and fences, bird and bat boxes not in situ, fences not completed, leaving a neighbouring boundary in question, and the delayed handover periods after completion. Why is planning enforcement so weak? Why are housing developments not inspected thoroughly? Why are developers not held to account, leaving the expense to the council or residents to put right, and what can be done to rectify this?
We have a response from Tracy Dark. Would you like to respond, Tracy?
Thank you, Chair. With regards to planning enforcement, the team that are tasked with this work do have a stream of complaints that cover all topics, but that are not directly related to planning enforcement. So, for example, the raised ironworks in the highway, internal doors not sealing or closing properly are the responsibility of other services in the council, and the enforcement team forward these on to the services that deal with these direct. Some of the issues are snagging issues for the new homeowner to raise with the developer when they purchase the property, and of course are not really a matter for the council. Of course, some of those items that council has listed are planning enforcement. The holes in the fence case is probably and possibly a complaint that we had regarding hedgehogs, where the provision had not been made. We contacted the developer, and whilst they took longer than expected to rectify the breach, they did complete the works. Planning enforcement is a reactive service. It is not able to step in and deal with matters where there is other legislation in place. Moreover, the starting position for any development being built in accordance with the approved plans is with the developer. Unfortunately, there are occasions when this does not happen, and we have an enforcement team of 5 full-time officers who are more than fully employed dealing with enforcement cases. The team are making significant progress in clearing a backlog of cases, and this has now halved. In fact, actually, it's less than half. We have checked to see whether any of the cases, there have been any cases logged for Radbrook area in 2022. And other than the flowers in the verge that were referred to, there are none logged on our system. If Councillor Evans could advise us of the cases that there has been no response or outstanding cases, we will look at these and deal with them as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question? And just in advance for that, I think it's quite important to use, given us some photographs of the issues that are there, and I think it's important that we actually show these to members. So if you could share them, please, first Daniel, and then request for supplementary. No rush, Daniel.
Yeah, I'll have to set these up one by one.
Oh, that's fine. That's absolutely fine.
So there's one.
I landed this on Daniel last minute, so do bear with us.
I'll send you a See that one?
Yeah, has that been like that for 18 months, has it?
That was there for a year.
Yeah.
Barrett's left. They sold the last house just over a year ago. Not sold, it's actually occupied.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a lot of these were taken, I think it was last summer. Now the road has been tarmac now.
Yeah.
But these residents, some have been in there for 4 years, and they've had to live with this for 4 years. And when Barrett's left, they left that toilet and builder's debris there for, it was over a year. That then went into another section nearby where there are porter cabins, and a group of 4 workmen did the curbstones. That's all they did. We've got the best curbstones in Britain, I think, because they just kept redoing and redoing them. But the raised ironworks were there for over a year. The really awful ones at the moment, and I've just had another irate email about this, is the landscaping. None of the landscaping has been done. to the east of the development. It was done on the west side, but not on the east. And that it looks like a wasteland between the new estate and Falcons Way.
Okay, we've got a photograph of that, so then we'll push that. We'll get to the end of this, and I will open it up because I think this is obviously quite an important issue and happens in a lot of places. I do think developers really let themselves down when they leave places like this and don't understand. Oh.
Sorry, it's just sort of nice degree. Sorry about that.
Just
Right, so
going to Australia.
if you keep putting the photographs up, and you can ask your supplementary question, Julie.
I find that the answer wasn't great. That I got, many of the residents have repeatedly got back to the developers, and they are just brushed off and told there's nothing that can be done. In particular, it fails to address the building control issues, which are implicit in the question, referring only to refer to planning enforcement. It also makes no reference to issues around the green space management, when there is often a specific role, as in Shropshire may have to take over the management and maintenance function. As you can see, the landscaping there, we're going to have to do that. No, the road isn't adopted yet, and 2 schools are about to be built there. So there's a lot of issues going on here, and there will be problems because we're going to have lorries driving up there to get to the school, and this is unadopted. Please, can a fuller response be provided that explains more fully how residents can pursue these issues and which different sections of the council can provide to help to these residents facing these frustrations and real life issues that affect their lives? I've had many people telling me, especially along Swinter Pit, that they want to sell up. They won't invite friends and relatives around. They're so ashamed of where they live. And one resident called it the estate that Barrett's forgot.
Okay, Tracy, I'm happy for you to come back in.
Thank you, thank you, Chair. I think first of all, and I think in terms of the issues of the photos that were shown, primarily these are adoption issues, and this is about an estate and whether the roads have been adopted. And these issues can go on for a significant length of time. They are not planning enforcement issues. And I have to say, Chair, that I do take exception to the planning enforcement team being called weak, because they do work very, very hard dealing with planning enforcement matters. And actually, sometimes it's a lack of understanding of what are planning enforcement matters. Many of those, as I said, have been shown are highway adoption issues. So they are not for the planning enforcement team to pursue. They are for our highways adoption team to pick up. So if Councillor Evans could share those examples with us, of course, we will make sure that the right team picks up these issues. As far as the open space is concerned, there is a whole complexity around adoption of open space. In the main, a lot of developers prefer to have management companies to deal with the maintenance of their open spaces, because of course it's cheaper for them to do so. And of course we all know, because it's in the national press every week, around some of those companies when they go bust and the developments are left, and we get some of those examples that Councillor Evans has shown where areas are just left and residents are obviously upset and concerned about that. Where the council adopts open spaces, there is quite a rigorous process around that adoption, and again that can take a considerable amount of time, in fact months if not years. So I think there's a whole area around adoption of open spaces, which I'm afraid is not a matter for the planning enforcement team. It is other services in the council. This is not us as a service saying, well, we're just palming it off onto other areas. It's important that we use the right legislation to make sure that these matters are dealt with. So they are important, and Councillor Evans is right, but we need the information from her. As I've said, we've had no cases reported in the Radbrook area. So if we can have the information, we can follow that up for her and hopefully give her some information on how those departments are doing in terms of dealing with those issues. Thank you.
The Executive Director of Place, Mark Barrow, would like to say something.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just building on what Tracy said, quite often where there's a development that will be unadopted, will introduce a condition within planning that these kinds of works are done before occupation, because in an unadopted situation, there's very little protection for householders. However, you know, it is for householders through that process of buying to secure a commitment as to when these things will be done. In terms of the reasonable time for a developer to do highways and landscaping works that are suitable then for adoption by the council, there's a catch-22 here, because all the law provides is a reasonable time. And of course we hold the line, which is it has to be done to a standard that's acceptable before we will formally adopt it. And members, and I'm sure, will have their own stories and their own patches about things like streetlights, as well as, you know, quality highway servicing. To try and kind of break into that, there have been discussions with some of the larger developers about whether some form of bond type system could be put in place, whereby they lodged a bond with us, and then that could be enacted and work carried out in default if they didn't carry out work in time. I won't mention who they are, but you know, one of the big national house builders said, well, what about the system of maybe up to £1 million held as a bond by the council that could just then revolve around certain contracts? So I think there's something about exploring that. I think there is something about practices within the builder community, to be honest, that, you know, it's right to highlight and call out and, you know, say this is unacceptable. Fully understand the issues that residents have got. I think that's what we're looking to support here. In terms of what householders can do, though, I think there's something about the messaging, which is, you know, through the process of purchase, please, you know, through your solicitors, secure a commitment about what will be done when, or even talk about is there an element of money to be withheld from a purchase until that work is done. You know, sometimes those sort of things can provide householders with protection. So I think there's something about the whole kind of process here of how we support people that just assume through goodwill and good faith these things will be done really quickly and timely, and then, as you're showing, they're not. Quite often can take years. So we're happy to kind of take it away and look at that. I will engage with highways colleagues. We will pick up this particular example and get back to the
would it possible, I'm just thinking, the enforcement team at Tracy, for what it's worth, I think do a brilliant job under great duress and stress, and it is getting better and better. Personally, I can recognise the frustration of all your residents, because if you don't know where to go, I mean, it's very easy to say the council, it's the council's fault, they're not doing this, that and the other, but it is quite complex, as has been said. So I'm just wondering whether it might be worthwhile having a meeting, a Teams meeting with interested parties, with the different departments within the council, and see what can be done. And I think the idea about bonds is an excellent one. I don't know whether we can make a recommendation from this. About
You can make a recommendation to set up a working group.
I would like, yeah. Would you be happy with the working group, and we can look into this, because there is a frustration there. It's not knowing who to go to, what to do. The bonds thing, I think, is genius. You don't remember saying that? I'll just go over to Jean. Jean, I am having trouble. I should say. Go on, Julian.
Thank you. I mean, I welcome that, and I welcome the fact we have a working group. But my problem, I'm afraid, with the answer is that you know, we have a, and I hate to patronise Julia, but a first year councillor writing a question about a whole series of issues. The first department gets to is planning enforcement. They go, not me, Gov, it's somebody else, but doesn't pass on the question. You know, it's a question from a member about a whole series of issues, and we haven't got answers from building control. We haven't got answers from highways. You know, we've just got one answer from one department, so we're doing our job. That's not satisfactory in a way to deal with members' questions, it feels like.
So a working group.
And I think that the building control issues in particular, if we've got people, I'm just looking at a website that tells me what building control is responsible for. They are responsible for the quality of the buildings. If we've got people whose doors are not hanging properly, then yes, they have a responsibility. You know, those residents need to go to the developer. I get that, but there is also a backstop role for the council through building control if people are not getting satisfaction from the developer, and we're not being told that. We're just being told it's not planning enforcement, you know, it's some other department, and I'm afraid that's not the way to deal with members' questions.
I think planning conditions maybe can help in some, not a lot, but a few instances. I'll come to you, Roy, and then I'll close this down, because this is not just, sorry, member question. Yes, if I'm just, let Roy come in, please.
I mean, I've had similar problems as have we all with understanding, particularly in parishes, what planning enforcement is capable of doing. And as has just been mentioned, this first call from a member of the public or a member of the council really needs to be directed and followed up, not just a matter of, yeah, it's not us, so okay, have a word with the developer and we'll see what happens. You know, it should be actually directed to the department that should be dealing with it. So I would welcome to see a working party that will grease the wheels on this quite a bit and actually tell people, and I mean the communities, what planning enforcement is capable of doing and able to do for them.
Yes, and I think also perhaps giving the information to residents what they should be doing when they buy new houses, how to go about making sure they get.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Actually, I've got Mark as well. Yeah, Mark.
It was just to make the point to Councillor Dean that unfortunately, I'll say it in that way, a number of these large developments are sort of supervised by approved inspectors in terms of building control, and our building control service doesn't get involved. And maybe, Chair, that's maybe something that the working committee can, you know, so if we feel that there are, you know, approved inspector building control issues and people are saying it's not good enough, and we pick that up, well, that's also something legitimate to call out.
Yes. Tracy, I'll finish with you, but if you can think about what kind of scale you would like to look at this in, that'd be very good. Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. Mark's right. So approved inspectors deal with some, well, about 35–40% of work in Shropshire on building control matters. Door seals, you know, question around where they fall really. They are certainly not planning matters. We do not deal with internal doors. We do not deal with that sort of part of the work. It does not fall within planning at all. So there is a point around perhaps more training. I've spent a considerable amount of time doing training on enforcement matters, and I think some members here might have been to some of the sessions. I've done SELC, I've been talking to parish councils, so we've done quite a lot of training on helping members understand what planning enforcement is about. And, you know, it comes back to the whole point as well that it is reactive, I'm afraid, and that's the system that the government has set up in this country. We as officers would love to step in and do some of the things that members would like us to do. We get as frustrated as on matters of enforcement as members do, but we can only work within the legislation, and the team have to be very, very clear about that. In terms of passing issues on, what I've said in my response was we haven't passed any issues on. I've explained that there are other departments that deal with these matters, but actually the planning enforcement team, as I said to Councillor Evans, has not had the complaints. So they haven't passed them on because they haven't had them yet. And what they are very good at is holding the ring on bringing those complaints together. So if we can have the information, then they will source who needs to respond and make sure that she gets a response back on the matters of concern in her area.
Thank you, Tracy. Julia, Julia.
Yes.
Yeah, I've just got another question. Very confusing. Julia, I will let you back in, but this is the very last.
Yeah,
that's right.
Can I just say, I did put in a formal complaint, and I've had issues about this since I was elected, and I've been writing to planning enforcement ever since. And each time I'm talking to a different officer. I've also been in touch with Barrett's, Bogus, Vistry, CEOs, you name it. I've been in touch with them. So have the residents. So we've done all we can. This is the last. This is the safety net.
I think I'd be listening to Tracy and Mark and yourself, etc. And I do think that a lot of blame is being put on Tracy's department, and I don't think it doesn't lie there, and not just lie there. It doesn't lie there. Enforcement does work, but I think we need to be able to hold the builders to account. And also, I know it takes a long time legally to get roads adopted. As you say, we've all had it in our own areas. We understand how long it takes. It can take years. And there really isn't much we can do about that because it's a legal process. So I would welcome a one-off working group to look at the issues, as I say, particularly about a bond. We think actually that these builders would be embarrassed to leave the estates the way they do because it can't do them any good. And I hope members of the public are aware of this. I was closing this off now, Steve, but go on. Sure.
Just quickly, something I suggested quite many years ago about a bond, when I was told there was no mechanism within Shropshire Council to do that.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to have a working group. I would suggest that if we can pick it up in the next couple of months, that would be good, because I know everybody's got busy diaries, and if we can have officers from the relevant departments that these get passed on to, that would be very good. We're moving on there, Roger. Thank you. This is a member's question. I'd like to go on.
Can the cabinet member be involved? Because the
I'm
cabinet
sure,
member,
I'm sure the portfolio holder will be one of the invitees.
yeah, okay, because I think it's important that the cabinet member is aware of it, because they go cross department and they can pick these sort of issues up from members. They're our member there to do it.
Yes, we'll definitely have the portfolio holder there. We'll make sure that the meeting is arranged so that they're there. Thank you very much. And on that note, that was a very good discussion. Thank you for bringing that to us, Julia. We'll move on to item 6, which is the clear performance reporting. Andy Wild. Yeah. Off you go, Andy.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, so this was a very, very brief update just on the KPIs that concluded the report that went to this committee last month. We report on these at the moment quarterly, hence why the figures for January, February and March are not included in that report. Those have subsequently been submitted and follow a very similar pattern in terms of KPI performance. The only one of note, which I think was referenced in the report, is KPI 1B, which is not hitting the performance target. That's relates to reactive maintenance works linked to street lighting. Now, the position around reactive maintenance of street lighting is that a lot of our existing stock is old SOX lanterns, which are no longer manufactured in the UK. This is a similar problem other authorities in the UK are facing with availability of old equipment and our ability to repair old street lighting stock. So often it's literally impossible for us to find replacement lanterns for the old stock. Hence why there is a significant rollout of LED street lighting taking place across Shropshire at the moment. Also, when we have faults that occur within a system of street lighting which has been identified for replacement with LED, we will take the decision that that lantern will remain and be actually rolled up in the LED rollout rather than trying, to find a replacement SOX lantern for it, which is, as I said, very difficult. So that concludes effectively the KPI information that accompanied the report, Chair.
Thank you very much. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. See, these new KPIs were adopted as a result of the consultants that came in for Shropshire Council, later adapted to do it. And I'm looking at March 21, the one that came to the last one and the one today. And I see the same numbers there, K1A to KP1A, KP19. See the same numbers there, and there seems to be wide variation. In the March 21 KPIs for KP1A, it says that the target performance level was 70%. The target performance level now is 98%. Why has it been increased? Has the actual level been increased, or is the percentage? I'm not sure. If one reads the report in March 21, it raises a few issues, but I see it's at 62% in the latest one. Before that, it was at 100% in February. So 62% in February, 100% later on. So it does vary month by month. And as far as the lighting goes, I see the one in February, March was down at 12%. 12% when the target is 98%. The failure of the NOx lamps was highlighted in public 6 years ago. They stopped manufacturing them 4 years ago, I think, and it was highlighted then, and the council chose to ignore it. So it is there. Can we be assured that all the NOx lighting will be replaced at the end of this financial year, as per the original report, so that we can head up towards the 98%, which is expected?
I've got two heads saying no. I've got Dean Carroll, who's the portfolio holder, and Andy Wild. Which one of you would like to pick up on it first? Dean, do you want to come in first?
Yeah.
I think Andy's already covered off the point of why that KPI is consistently falling below target. It's falling below target because of national factors. In terms of your question about when will the rollout be completed, Roger, you've asked that question to either Cabinet or Council for next week, which we provided a response for. The rollout is aimed to be completed at the end of the 23-24 financial year, as was in the programme. I don't understand why you're expressing surprise at these figures at this point in time. In terms of your other statement, which I find to be more than a little bizarre, about why has the target KPIs increased from last year, because our expectation of performance is better, it is higher than it was last year, because the service is performing a lot better than it was last year, because we're driving greater performance. We've been able to invest more money in this financial year. That's why the targets are higher, because we expect better. Personally, I think that's a good thing.
Thank you. Do you want to add to that, Andy?
Nothing further to add, really, Chair, to what Councillor Carroll has highlighted there. Yeah, the performance figures are high because that's where we expect the performance level to be. We also take a pragmatic view when there is mitigating circumstances. So, you know, the availability of stock is a genuine reason why the contractor is finding it very, very difficult to hit that 98%. We also do not want the contractor to be going out to old stock unnecessarily when there's a programme of LED replacement on the horizon that will mean that we can replace the whole street at one time rather than running around in an inefficient way. So that there are genuine circumstances around that, and we have a commitment to complete that programme, and we will fast track it wherever we can to try and bring that time scale down.
Okay, thank you. Julian.
Thanks. I'm just considering that it might help if we knew exactly how many lamps are involved. That percentage could be of 4 lamps, or it could be 400 lamps, and that would be an interesting figure, and it would just help us understand the story perhaps a little bit better if we could, especially when there's a KPI which is going to be off target. We don't necessarily have to do it with all the others, but when they're off target, it'd just be useful to have the numbers behind it.
Do you actually know off the top of your head what the number is roughly?
Not off the top of my head, Chair. I'd need to dig the data out of our management system to confirm that, but I'm happy to follow that up.
Yes, please. If you could email members, that would be really good. David.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm worried about these KPIs because if you look at KPI 8, customer satisfied with the performance of Kia and supply chain, and its target performance level is 80%, and you know we're recording 100% sort of KPI score. But if you talk to anybody on the street and ask them about the performance of Kia and about potholes, you'll get quite some strong reactions. And I worry that, you know, we're talking here and looking at 100% KPI score and thinking we're patting ourselves on the back, but in actual fact, that's not reflected in how people view the performance of Kia. And I just wondered how that particular KPI is put together, how you actually get to a figure of 80%, for example, and what sort of data what the data is behind it, really.
Okay, thank you, Andy or Dean.
I'm happy to pick that one up, Chair. So with regards to capital schemes, what we will do is once that scheme is completed, we will ask people the question on how that scheme has been delivered, and that data is the feedback that we receive. In terms of customer perception, you know, there's a significant piece of work to be done on engagement, which we've talked about. It featured in the previous report about the aspiration of the service over the next 12 months to engage more meetings at an early stage because of the budget certainty that we now have. we have the ability to confidently communicate about what work is in our pipeline. And I sense that that will change public perception, because at the moment we don't have the ability to engage in the way that we would like, and we don't have that ability to do the level of engagement and discussion ahead of our work. So I sense, you know, that piece of work will start to improve that. But I think public perception is always a difficult one to manage, because, you know, often it relies on a significant amount of information and communication, which we simply haven't had the time to do up until this point.
Okay, thank you. Jeff?
Thank you very much indeed. Is there a system when you go and have a look at a lamp that's broken or not working and you discover you can't repair it? Is there a system to get it automatically repaired? The reason I ask that is literally I forgot my phone before I came today, because as I was going out the door, the phone rang, and I had a member of our community having a right moan at me about a lamppost that we've reported 3 times and it's still not been repaired. And it's just dawned on me, maybe it's not been repaired because it can't be repaired. But what is the system? If you go out there and it's not repairable, do you then automatically put it on a list to replace it, or what do you do?
I mean, the plan there is, I mean, we are currently looking at a rollout of Fix My Street, which we hope the system will then provide that dynamic information back to the customer that then gives them the information that you're referring to, because at the moment it is, you know, difficult to provide that dynamic information. But ideally what we want is things being reported through Fix My Street to have that system that allows that information to feed back. So if we can't undertake a repair for whatever reason, then at least the customer is informed of that, and it doesn't then just disappear into a black hole that then doesn't close the loop off in terms of feedback.
Thank you. This one was on Fix My Street. I'll check on that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. Following on from that, is any priority given to particularly crucial lampposts? I mean, we all know where there are junctions and sections of highway where there could be an accident cluster spot. So if something's reported and it could be on the list for, we'll do that when we're doing a patch, we won't do a smart one. Surely there are some parts of the highway network where, you know, that having an adequate lighting is far more important than others, perhaps where there aren't many lights or where it's a particularly busy junction. Is there any part of the system which actually gives priority to particular types of lighting?
In terms of faults, when a fault is reported, what our street lighting team will do will be reviewing all of the information that's coming back into the system. And if we have a street light that's for you know, safety reasons needs to be replaced quickly, we will potentially, if we can't get old stock and it's linked to the SOC's lack of availability, we'll potentially do a replacement using LEDs as a one-off if it's safety critical. So, you know, that information is processed, and the team will make dynamic decisions to get things replaced if they need to, and it can't wait for a programme of work.
Thank you. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand NOx lamps are in short supply, as was predicted many years ago. But if we look at K1B, it says reactive routine highway and environmental maintenance tasks completed in time, street lighting. Are they reported to Kier? Are we actually expecting Kier to do the impossible or not? Because we know the lamps aren't there. If Kier are performing well and doing the work that they are have the ability to do because the lamps are available, then okay, it should be up. But to put down that as 12% for Kier means that we have given them jobs. Our expectation is that they will do those jobs, but they're at 12%. So are we giving jobs to Kier who they are impossible to complete? 12% is abysmal for a month. I would expect some action to be taken, but if it's because they can't do the work, then that work should be put to one side, and we, the Shropshire Council, taking Councillor Mosley's comments on, should be prioritising the lamps that are replaced to ensure safety concerns are addressed.
Thank you, Roger. You raised a very good point there. If you could respond, please, Andy.
Well, the figures are the amount of reactive jobs that have been raised on inspection that technically need a replacement. So rather than change the data, we just give it as it is. And if they have repaired, you know, the figures that are well short, because we understand the reasons, but rather than change the data, we just present it as it is. So it's an honest reflection. We understand the reasons why they are not able to replace them. Our street lighting team understand the reasons they can't replace them, and all of that data is being recorded, but we're not beating them over the head or trying to penalise them for something they physically can't do. The Alliance team understand what this looks like, but we are simply presenting the data in an honest format.
Thank you very much. Yes, Roger.
Quick one if I can. And I'm not criticising the street lighting team, and I congratulate Andy and the team. I brought some issues up at our last meeting and they've been sorted. So the street lighting team is there. I'm just criticising the system and the process that is in place at present. And is that a correct process? Should we be looking at that process to enable it to be done more efficiently and better, so that if there is a safety issue on a corner or a junction, that is prioritised and that is done. And if there is limited stock, that's the one that's done.
We have recommendations, you know, Roger, and it doesn't make any appropriate recommendations based on these scores. And if you think that merits it, I can put it to the committee and it could be something that we look at.
I'll propose that, Chairman.
Chair, can I respond to that?
I was coming to you next, actually, Dean. I did see your hand was up. Thank you. Sorry, go on.
Thank you. I believe Andy had literally within the last couple of responses outlined that our response to locations where it's a critical safety issue is exactly what Councillor Evans has just asked you to add to our work programme, that if it is a critical safety issue in a location, that will be prioritised for replacement. Unless I was imagining what Andy had just said, that is what I believe Andy had actually just outlined, that is already our policy. And in terms of whether we should not be reporting things because we know that there are supply chain difficulties, well, if we don't report them into the system, then we won't know where to prioritise the rollout of the main LED replacement programme most effectively. If they're not in the system, we have to put them in the system. We can't just ignore that. And as Andy has said, we've tried to be honest. I would accept all the criticism in the world if we moved the target just to reflect the performance wasn't great, that we moved the target so that it was suddenly green without having improved performance. But we've not chosen to do that. We've chosen to still show that our aspiration is for a high performing service. We've recognised, and Andy has explained, that there are reasons outside of our control and outside of Kia's control and outside of the supply chain's control for why that target hasn't been met in this quarter or earlier in the year. I think he was pretty clear about that, but I still think it's absolutely the right approach to take for us to show that our aspiration is for a high performing service, and we absolutely need to be recording light failures and column failures so that we know where to prioritise the LED rollout programme.
Thank you. David.
Yeah, thank you. Just following up my question and Andy's answers about customer satisfaction. I wonder when we perhaps we consider these KPIs again. Maybe we ought to have a report about the work that's being done to improve and get a better more details about customer satisfaction, how that can be improved. Perhaps we can get a report the next time we discuss it.
Is that possible? Can we do that? I will ask the portfolio holder.
Andy, you know the way the data is collected probably better than I. Is it possible to put that kind of a narrative into it?
Yeah, I mean, the rollout of the customer engagement and stakeholder engagement process, I think will probably bring this more into focus. So, you know, we've got KPIs around customer satisfaction at the moment. However, the new process that we're working on currently ahead of ahead of 2023 will see that change. So I think it's probably fair that as we work that through, there will be some tweaking or sort of review of those KPIs to see if they are measuring actually what we want to measure. They were brought in as a reflection of, you know, poor performance in this area, and as we start to sort of see that improve, I do sense that it would be prudent to review those KPIs. So we'll happily capture that as part of the process and just ensure that we are measuring all the things that we need to measure across that area.
Julian, Dan is coming in next, though. We've been waiting patiently.
Just on the matter of some of the suggestions about where to take these various topics, I'd just like to remind you all that you know that we had to have on the draft work programme a proposal to look at the lighting programme early next year. Performance monitoring is something that comes regularly to this committee and will also be against the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee. So this key performance monitoring will absolutely be considered by this committee, if not this committee, and the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee going forward. I think there was the third thing just mentioned about, I think Andy just mentioned around engagement. And obviously we're looking around communications within highways, both within the highway service and within our customer services teams at our next meeting as well. So just to provide you some assurance that there's going to be opportunities in your work programme for the year ahead, should you agree your work programme, of course, to discuss all of these items in more depth going forward.
Okay. Thank you. Julian.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, first of all, just on Roger's suggestion, I would be very nervous about triaging complaints in order for them not to make their way onto the waiting list. That sounds like dodgy NHS practice to me. I'd rather we had all the complaints, even if the figure then looks not great. Just to, in terms of recommendations, I would recommend that we have, when there's a KPI which is well off, that we have a bit of the raw data. So just the numbers would have been useful in that particular case. So that might be helpful. And the second one is there a form of words that can go on Fix My Street when the reason that there is a delay is precisely because it's a part of a replacement programme? I think that's perfectly reasonable to put that as a form of words on Fix My Street. And just as a final comment, I'm very pleased that we've shifted to Fix My Street from My Shropshire. It's much more user friendly, and it's great where you can see your own reports and you can see the feedback, and so can your residents. So I welcome that.
Okay, I'm happy to take those forward as recommendations. Is everybody happy to take those forward as recommendations? Yes, can we vote on it? I'm sure we're all in agreement. Yeah, that's fine. For those recommendations, that'd be great. And I think we've fulfilled everything we asked to in the recommendations, so we can now move on to item 7, if everyone's happy with that, which is planning committee structures. Daniel, your report.
Thank you very much, Chair. The report in front of you contains the additional research that you asked for at your previous meeting. I've done some of this research for you. Tracy's provided some of these figures for you. Some of it we were unable to find. You asked for me to sort of see if I could find any sort of research that looked into the value of local knowledge within the planning process, and I had a thorough look at that, and I even managed to borrow an Athens subscription to see if there was any sort of academic research as well, and I couldn't find anything at all, I'm afraid. So I think that challenge has to fall at the moment, unless the members here who made the claim have got something that they can share with the committee. I certainly can't find anything. I've also looked at some schemes of delegation for you, and I've put some in the report for you. By and large, they are much of a muchness. And obviously some have higher thresholds for going to committees than others, and as I said in the report, I think it's you might be able to surmise that a stricter process of reducing fewer committees or vice versa, but to be honest, on the few that I looked at, I couldn't really see any correlation with that, and I think any sort of research into that would probably be quite a project in itself in terms of the resources behind that. I don't see anything there that would suggest that it actually merits further investigation, though again, you might think. So really the extra research that you've asked us to carry out doesn't really, in my view, answer the questions conclusively either way. So I'm afraid I'm going to say that I think in terms of trying to provide background information for this, I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much. I have to say, reading the report, thank you for the extra information, Tracy, Daniel. It's a good report. There is, in my opinion, nothing really, that would warrant it going back to 3 committees. I'm just thinking about the last committee meeting of the Northern Planning Committee, where we had several roundabouts in one planning application. If you start trying to split anything anyway, it would be ridiculous. They'd hardly ever meet. In fact, I think at some point in the future, maybe there might only be one lead for one committee made up of members from across the county, but I throw that in there. Nobody's talked to me about it. But personally, I think it should stay as it is, but I'm welcome to listen to members. Thank you, Steve.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We've looked at this. I've looked at this 3 times when I was scrutineer chair. Inside out, back to front, and upside down. It's where we are today. Leave it where it is.
The microphone.
Oh, your microphone wasn't on.
It was on the.
Your microphone wasn't on.
Okay.
Do you want to repeat it?
Not
Or?
really.
Okay, Paul.
My microphone's on.
Sorry? You say it then.
Yeah. No, I think we were all apprehensive when we first went into 2 committees from 3. I think Shrewsbury, South, the North were all very apprehensive. But I think we're getting less applications coming to us. We do whittle it down, the agenda, yes we do. Unless they've got very good reasons to come to committee, we don't let them come. And I think we've got stronger at that. And I think now the North and Central, I think it's working very well actually. I'm not sure they think so. The other planning, but I think it's working very well, very smoothly. It's non-political. It's a planning meeting, and that's it. I know Shrewsbury don't know what's going on in farms, and farms don't know what's going on in Shrewsbury, but you learn. You know, it's a learning. I think it's working all right. So leave it be.
If I can lighten the mood, it's definitely non-political because you voted against me at the last meeting.
That's my choice.
Dan.
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree with you, Joyce. I think we should consider looking at one.
David.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the Chair of Northern Party would say that, wouldn't he? But I do think there are problems. I still think there are problems with the way in which those committees operate, and I do still feel that a number of planning applications don't come to the planning committee, which I think should do. And I always think that it'd be better for that process whereby the chair and vice chair actually go through planning applications, for that process to be more open for the members to have more involvement in that process.
Okay, if I can throw that back at you, I think actually it's a very fair process. I think if you read the report or reread the report, you'll see there are very good reasons there why we don't go to committee, and the training I'm sure should have helped, but I'm not sure it has, Tracy. If I can come over to you, Pam.
Thank you. I feel we're at a time to move on moment here, and
Yeah.
somewhat regret, because while we considered it several times, I still very much opinion that we should have local committees with a central one in the central county centre on Shrewsbury. The report does say that many, but not all, in the brackets, parish and unitary councillors spoke of the desire to retain 3. I'm still of that opinion. I can see we're not getting through, but I really do regret that we are, and I regret the fact that the political balance, because of being county-wide now, means that certain groups, including my own, are underrepresented on this.
Right, sorry, we've got 2 more speakers. I'm going to take you 2, and then we will take a vote whether we're going to stay. Tracy, do you want to come in now, or do you want to come in after the next 2 speakers?
Thank you. I'll come in after the next speakers if that's okay, Joyce. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Morris on the idea of one planning committee. And secondly, one thing I notice comes up regularly is subs on planning committees. Now, here we have members who are trained in planning, experienced. I can't south use north substitutes and north use south substitutes. Right. That's right. I was asleep while that happened.
I think it's only twice it's happened, if I'm correct. It's only twice it's happened. And you would have missed it if you weren't watching the emails. Yeah. Actually, the portfolio holder wants to come in, Ed Potter, and Tracy wants to come in, and Roger wants to speak. So I think we'll have Roger, then I'll come to you, Ed, and then I'll come to you, Tracy, if that's okay. Off you go, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. The present two committee system was a recommendation by officers which went straight to council. If you go back in history, there's been several task and finish groups meet with members. Every time the task and finish groups and the committees have come back with 3 committees, and I've got here the minutes of the task and finish group dated July 2015, and it quotes Steve Davenport as being the chairman of the scrutiny committee, or there, and it makes a recommendation there for three committees. It also makes a recommendation that members agree that the process for deciding which applications were delegated and which went to committee should be examined and made clearer. That has appeared in every report that's been done, scrutiny, task and finish groups. The last report that came here, we've all said that it needs to be made clearer so members and parish councils are aware of what is going to committee and isn't, especially members. I've never seen the report which goes to the chairman and vice chairman and the appropriate officer for it. I've asked several times, and it's appeared in committees and ever several times that it should be there, and it never is. It also says in the protocol that where the officer's recommendation is contrary to the parish council, the elected member should be contacted to see if they support the parish council. I think that rarely happens in my experience. But okay, some others may differ, but as I say, I think I can number on one hand the number of occasions that has happened.
Well, excuse me if I'm wrong, Roger, but we all get emails telling us what applications to put in our area, and we can then say whether we can.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm talking about protocol, and it says that when the officers meet the chairman and the vice chairman to decide the agenda, and the officer's recommendation is contrary to what the parish council has said, the local member should be contacted to see if they agree with the parish council's view or not. That's the one I'm on about. Also, I will come back to your comment in that the 21 days for members and the 31 days for the parish councils, I think is unworkable. And I did make reference before, and I see it isn't there. Member has 21 days, parish council has 31 days. I prefer to see what the parish council says before I comment, because it's the combination of those two which should actually trigger whether it goes to the planning committee and to be considered or not. And I'm not sure how that can work. I'll shut up there.
No,
But yeah,
thank you.
I think it should be 3.
So I think the report makes it clear, and Roger, I think the report makes it clear that very often parish councillors don't actually come up with material planning reasons for refusing them, and that's why they get refused. And I can understand members desperately wanting it to get to committee when it shouldn't be there. So I'll cross you on that one if you don't mind. I've got a number of people waiting to speak. Daniel, do you want to come at the end or? Yeah, go for it.
I think Roger touches on some points here that have been in earlier report. I think when I did the initial research on this, it actually brought up a whole raft of issues, quite aside from the planning committee structure. And as an officer advising a committee in scrutiny, I would suggest that some of those topics merit scrutiny, to including the protocols, training programmes and the understanding in town and parish councils. There are actually some quite interesting things that you could look at here, if you know, quite aside from the number of planning committees that you have. But I think in the debates, in the earlier debates on this topic, those ancillary issues got a bit lost. So obviously your committee, your rules, but I would just remind you that there are other aspects of planning that were touched upon in those meetings that you've not really addressed fully yet.
Yeah, I don't know whether perhaps you missed some of those meetings, Roger. If I bring in a portfolio holder, sorry.
One quick one, Mike.
Okay, then go on, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. We do now let the parish councils know why it's not in the committee. We make a little or that sent over. Didn't realise it doesn't come to members. I'm sure Tracy can put that into action and make sure those notes go to the members, which it relates to. Okay, thank you.
That's good to know. Thank you. So I'm bringing the portfolio holder now, Agriculture, and then we'll come to you, Tracy.
Hi, hello. I hope everyone can hear me. My signal's not brilliant. But just to reiterate, I think since the additional information has come forward, my position is still very much the same. Just also to pick up on what Paul has said about feedback from the agenda setting. I have recently been receiving feedback as a local member on applications, and so have my parishes, and I think that's very welcome, and it's a great addition. So I think I'm hoping that that's sort of starting to roll out into place, and as part of our sort of improvement plan for planning and communication with members as well. I think ultimately, I think this committee could look at planning performance more generally. And I think you'll see, I'm not preempting what you might find, but I've noticed vast improvements in the planning service over the past 12-18 months. And I think that's something that would be useful to have a look at more widely, because I know now that in the past 12 months, the number of complaints coming into my inbox has reduced significantly by both members of the public, agents, applicants, residents, neighbours, whatever it might be, even local members. So, but I am firmly of the opinion that two committees is what is workable for this local authority in terms of our capacity to deliver well thought through, well presented reports. And ultimately we want to provide a really good service for our residents in terms of planning, and you know, spreading ourselves too thinly I don't think would serve our communities well. And I haven't seen anything in the report that would state or persuade me otherwise. So that's just to reiterate what has been said and to sort of reassure members such as Roger that I think there are improvements in place, and the feedback coming back to local members is actually quite welcome. And I commend the planning. It's Northern Planning Committee my area is in, so Councillor Paul Wynne for ensuring that officers provide that feedback to both myself and the parish, because it is really appreciated.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ed. Tracy, you get the final word.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of the committees, and I think the chairs will probably agree, we sometimes have inadequate business for two committees. So there is a question, you know, there are meetings that have to be cancelled because there isn't anything to take to the meeting. So I think, you know, there's a thing around the numbers, isn't there, that goes to committee, and whether we've got the number of committees right that deals with the business. And, you know, and whilst it's a periphery issue around the cost of running those committees, I think it is something that has to be thought about in terms of numbers. The point around that was raised about the political imbalance, dare I say, planning is not supposed to be political at all. And you know, it is about having consistent decisions across all committees, and it shouldn't really matter. And I'll just leave that hanging, but it shouldn't really matter as to, you know, what the politics are really. The point that was raised about scrutiny in July 2015, I'd like to think we're 7 years on from that decision, and we have to make sure that we're fit for purpose now, not, you know, what was right for 2015 has to be right for what the position is now in terms of the planning service. And I think going on from what Councillor Potter has said, you know, the number of applications we have has significantly dropped because we've cleared out a lot of the old backlog, so we're in a lot better position, and there should be fewer applications that need to be coming forward to committee now. There is a point about having bespoke arrangements as well with members. I hate bespoke arrangements because I have then officers leave, and then, you know, somebody's promised Councillor Evans that we're always going to do that, and then it gets forgotten because it's a special arrangement, and then there's annoyance because they don't get the information. Whatever we do and however we provide information to members, I prefer it to be as automated as possible so that it just happens every time and we get it right, rather than being criticised for the times when we miss it because it's just something in somebody's head. So we can look at the agenda setting meeting with the chairs and just make sure that we get the information and the communication as best as we possibly can to members so that they're fully aware of what's going to the agenda setting meeting. You will see from the report it's about a third that actually go on the agenda, and you know, the point in the report that talks about the reasons for that, you know, we do member training. We did member training, you know, back in June. We did it again just recently, and I could put the slide up in front that says to members, here are the material planning reasons that an application may want to go to committee or may be refused. So we do give it to members on a plate, really. You know, you've only got to pick up something from that list and say, this is the reason I want it to go to committee, and it will be put on the agenda to be considered. So it is, you know, and members can just ask us for those reasons. We can tell you what a material planning considerations. So so there shouldn't be a concern for a member if they want it on committee. You know, the information is there for them. We can continue to do more member training. We don't want to do member training to death and bore members. We don't always get a great uptake on attendees on it. So, you know, we sort of see that as perhaps members are a bit fed up of more planning training. So we can certainly look at that, and we are in the process of putting together a training programme for members on planning issues, not just planning committee, but in a wider sense. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. A couple of things. First of all, with your permission, I actually shared the slides that you said I could with my parish council, which has been a huge help because it does explain a lot about what can go to committee, how the whole process works. And I might suggest that maybe all members can share the particular slides that you sent me, because I think that would be really useful, because often parish councillors don't understand. Some do, but some don't. The other thing I was going to say is, like most politicians, I think I told it, I said you were getting the last word. Roger is desperate to speak, and Pam Mosley, and I really am going to cut it off after this. Okay, Roger, quickly.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Quick one. I'm not asking for bespoke. I think it's in the protocol that members that should be wrong, and it should be a default for all members wrong, to see if they support the parish council or not. So it's that should automatically kick in. But what I put my hand up for was to make a proposal, Chairman. I think we would all agree with it, hopefully, and that is that we ask officers to look at the 21 and 31 days there to try and marry them up so they are similar for both the members and the parish council.
I think that's impossible, isn't it, Roger? Because I think we've looked at this before, and the problem is that parish councils have their meetings at various times of the year, and
it's dead easy. Sorry, Chairman, it's dead easy. You just take the members to 31 days as well. Exactly the same. Marry them up. Because if the parish council says no, yes, but whatever, the local member would be contacted anyway. But really, it makes it easier if the local member knows what the parish council has said to actually echo it. It straightens it up, because if the members put it in and the parish council says no, doesn't go anywhere. But 31 days for both, it makes it a lot easier and more simple. everybody then understands the system.
It works at the moment, but I will put your recommendation to members shortly and they can vote on it.
No, I don't need to speak now.
Okay, right. All those in favour of Roger's recommendation, can you put your hand up? 6, 7. Those against? 1, 2, and myself 3. So you've had it. So we can move that recommendation. I assume it will go to cabinet. Okay, we'll take that to cabinet. There you are. Non-political there, Roger. Yeah. Okay. Now then, I will now put a vote to the committee that we maintain the situation of 2 planning committees that will endorse that. Can I have those in favour of the 2 committees? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that recommendation goes. Do we have to actually agree with you already now, just that we endorse this?
I say it's okay to go with this with Roger's, but with the committee's recommendations.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you everyone. This has been long and drawn out. We now move to another one that's been very long and drawn out. With that, I'll bring in Gary Parton. It's banners, bunting, Christmas lighting, and temporary signage policy review. So take it away, Gary.
Thank you, Chair. At the last committee meeting where banners, bunting and illuminations was tabled, I needed to give my apologies for no significant progress being made on the recommendations contained in section 2 of the report. Those recommendations were that officers engage further with town and parish councils in order to draft a revised policy and process consideration. The vast majority of banner applications received are for one or more of the approved fixing points in Shrewsbury. Historically, the former borough council devised a process for regular testing of fixing points, supply of accredited labour, the equipment needed to fix and dismantle, and a diary booking system for applications. Whilst the powers to licence were transferred under Unitary, the logistics to test fixing points and advise on suitable catenary wires, etc., and their lifespan remains largely with the town council. Due to both the numbers of applications in Shrewsbury and the historical and current logistical issues presented, further discussions and liaison has taken place with STC regarding to how to resolve these contemporary issues, whilst also ensuring that Shropshire Council, as designated highway authority, retain the powers permitting banners to be installed over and along the highway. Discussions so far have revolved around a potential dual process, which would allow STC to manage applications and diary bookings by their own agreed process, so hence retaining some local control and input, whilst permission to erect under licence is retained by Shropshire Council. Discussions are ongoing with a view, if feasible, in meeting previous recommendations, that any resultant model is highlighted for further consultation with other town and parish councils on a revised policy and process, which also takes into account local criteria and aligns with our service priorities and strategic objectives. A further recommendation from the report advised that separate policies were created for banners over the highway and alongside the highway. While discussions with STC are currently involving banners over the highway, this is also an opportunity to look at the logistical problems of ownership of railings, fences and walls bordering the highway, ensuring safety and compliance, and controlling proliferation and content. I think in a nutshell what I'm saying is that the pressures on officers, if you like, seem to be with Shrewsbury Town Council as they present the majority of the applications, or the majority of applications from Shrewsbury, in order to kind of present a draft revised policy and procedure to other town and parish councils. I think that's where their kind of work lies. So that's talking to Helen more in a minute about how we can resolve some of the issues there.
Right, so have you got anything to say on this, or do you just want to move with the recommendations that the group officers and instructed with County Parish Council in order to further identify best practice provision for specific retail centres and any local conditions that could be included, and that a revised policy and process for banners, bunting and Christmas illuminations is drafted for consideration. I'm very well aware there are a number of members on this committee who weren't on it when this was initially discussed. But we did talk about it in depth, and Helen came from Shrewsbury Town Council and had a lot of input into it. So is everybody happy to move with those recommendations? Yeah? Yes, Dan.
I've obviously read through the report a few times, probably me missing it, but I can't, sort of like charity events and that sort of thing, ones that are non-profit making, it doesn't seem to specify. It seems a little bit, well, bully's a bit harsh, but it just doesn't seem to button it down. So I just wondered whether Gary could clarify.
Yeah, I think the guidance, though, if you could like to say that we don't allow commercial events. So I think by proxy we kind of do allow charitable events and then those that are more community based. So without actually saying it in the
could you put it in the wording when you come up with the draft policy?
Yeah,
to make it quite clear. Yeah, because I think when we discussed it before, a lot of these people who do runs, you know, Boston Street, Shrewsbury, is profit-making organisation, and I think those are the people. Yes, Jeff.
Just one quick one. What about political banners? I mean, we've just had elections. There's going to be another election next year, I would imagine. Not sooner. How does it control that? Because there's signs going up. They've been up. Some of them have been up for months after the election. Whose responsibility is that, and how can we control that?
I think I know the answer to that one, but I'll let Mark answer.
Well, the responsibility is the people who put them up, of course, and you know, de facto, I guess, agents. You know, is perhaps we put them on notice here. If they're up for an unreasonable time, occasionally there's a kind of clearance and you know bit that takes place. It's not just those; it's developer signs, it's you know events that happen in local areas, and occasionally the team have to just cull them. To be honest, fortunately, we don't have as much resources as we'd like to kind of do that, and they do hang around for a little bit, don't they, Gary? But any real issues, let us know, and we'll get someone in the street scene team when they're in. And this is the thing. So we have a cycle of kind of clearance from street scene. If we know something's just getting in the way and annoying people, and let's be honest, there can be a proliferation of these things at times. Can't we clear them out?
You can report it to the legal team here, and they'll get in touch with whichever party is left in there.
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure you wouldn't do that. Right, do you want to say something, Daniel?
Yes, please. Obviously, that task and finish group had another string to it, and that was around A-boards and pavement licences. This committee agreed to send that to Cabinet, and then the pandemic hit, and the Cabinet replied, said, no, we don't want to discuss this at the moment. There's a pandemic on the high street, it's collapsing. Now is not the time to have discussions around licences or increasing licence fees for all manner of permits. So this committee agreed to put that in abeyance, but obviously now the pandemic is over, and we have yet to receive response from Cabinet on those recommendations. So I might suggest that the committee send those recommendations back to Cabinet for a decision.
Thank you. Yeah, should we do that?
I'll propose that, Chair, if you wish.
Yeah, second. Everyone agrees? Yeah. And is everybody happy with the recommendations for this? Then it goes forward. Yes, Roger.
There is a second set of recommendations.
Yes, thank you for those. That's a separate one. Thank you very much. So everyone's happy with that? Thank you very much. In that case, we will now move on again. And it's you again, Gary. Proposed fees for event closures, temporary traffic restrictions order. That's not talking about those in the last one.
Thank you, Chair. So on events, possibility of introducing a fee or charge for events on the highway that involve the TTRO, which is basically a temporary traffic regulation order, a road closure, or a single part.
Chairman, on item 8, there's a second part in item 8.
Oh.
Recommendation. on page 5 to do with temporary signage. Are we taking that
Oh,
as?
that's the one with the, yes. Can we take it all as one? I assume you would.
I can give a brief update on the temporary direction. It's a different.
Your report is very good and I'm sure everybody's read it.
Right.
Unless anybody wants to hear all about this? No? No enthusiasm. It's very good.
Thanks. Yeah, so events, the event of closure for TTROs for events. The briefing note submitted in March of this year, when it was last discussed, set out some of the background considerations and proposal for introducing a fee for those events which involve assessing or processing TTRO. A recommendation was then made that a fee structure be implemented and that this be applied to commercial organisations, but not to not-for-profit organisations. Further advice and recommendations are now sought from a revised draft policy and fee structure. Also some considerations of possible exemptions or mitigations for charity and community organised events that may have limited budgets. In addition to those applications received from public sector organisations such as town councils, business improvement districts, and or established historic market events. As highlighted in the submitted report, a benchmarking exercise with other authorities already charging for this service evidenced some commonality in approach, and that was that in non-profit groups were either exempt from paying a fee or were subject to a significant reduction. Also, in some instances, authorities applied a sliding scale fee structure, which is based on a disruption effect, and whether an event would be affected, for example, a busy traffic sensitive route or a lesser class of road footway, which is not traffic sensitive. Officers believe that for any introduction of a fee structure, the emphasis would need to be on a justified recovery of incurred costs basis, which is both defendable and reasonable and passes audit scrutiny. On this basis, and as an example for discussion, officers have used the breakdown of activities and costs currently used for the recovery of TTRO road closure costs that involve works on the highway, so those involving utility companies or other statutory undertakers, as a base for a similar fee structure for events. This is believed to be a reasonable approach, as the work involved in assessing and processing a temporary legal order for events is equal to, it can often be greater than, work involved for works purposes. The current fee for processing an order for works purposes stands at £1,650 per application using this method of cost recovery calculation. It's also recognised that there should be consideration of an appropriate and reasonable process which doesn't unduly deter event organisers, reflects partnering initiatives, community engagement, and the authority's ethos and reputation. Officers have proposed that a sliding scale of charge based on an event's disruption effect would better reflect both the scale of the event being applied for and the officer's work involved. For ease of application, to reflect the often positive benefits that events bring, and in order for structure to remain competitive and continue to attract event organisers, officers would initially propose a fee of £1,240 for those events deemed to be in the higher of the sliding scale, such as large scale events, and £500 for those events deemed to be in the lower scale. As an explanation to that, the 1,240 figure represents a 25% reduction or subsidisation of the charge levied for similar closures for works, and is competitive to what neighbouring authorities are charging for the service. The £500 figure represents an approximate 60% reduction from the proposed 1,240 figure, and is deemed to reflect the minimum disruption or restrictions on the lower class roads. Officers would welcome further recommendations and guidance with a view to finalising a revised policy stroke fee structure to be considered by Cabinet for revised charging structure to be reflecting the council-wide fees for 2023-24.
Okay. Any questions? No? Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Does the committee need to make any comment about their views about charity and profit-making organisations? I couldn't see anything in the report which says that they will not be charged or anything like this. I think it intimates it may be different, but last time through your chairman, it was thought that small community organisations shouldn't be charged about it. But I can't see that in the report, and I'm asking, do we need to include that so that it is there and raised up in importance, so that it is there and the opinion of members are noted when it takes it forward? Because as I see it, it's going out, and then a draft strategy will come forward. So is this feeding into that, Chairman?
Yeah.
In my belief, yeah, that's what I'd like to steer on, because from experience, event organisers can be a mixture of all sorts of things. So some have a small charitable donation involved, some are totally profit making. There's a whole raft of different types of event organisations. So some could be completely community based, others will be politically based, so there'll be a town or parish council, for example. But it's trying to say, well, it's a very, at the moment, it's a very kind of, is either non-profit or it is profit. And I think there's lots of areas of grey in between, really. I think where we either have a steer on or we use on discretion to say, well, we change we can also part of the process is to change the application. So at the minute, the application page takes to a page on the web page, you go through a series of questions. So one of those questions could kind of intimate how much is it, is there a charitable aspect, how many people will be attended, are you charging those people? But then it's kind of, we are taking that, I don't think we're going to be digging into anybody's finances to find the truth or that kind of thing. It's going to be taken very much with face back. So a steer would be good, yeah.
How about something like Oxford Food Festival, where the town council is doing it, but actually the person that organises it is a private enterprise and makes profit out of it. It isn't actually the town council.
That's the kind of grey areas I'm thinking about, which is not easy to.
Yeah. Yes, Mark.
Maybe as a suggestion, because it is incredibly complex, this, isn't it, and situational. Maybe there's a recommendation about the decision in consultation with a local member who will have that local knowledge and know the background that you just described, Chair, just as you all will. You know, is it a commercial organisation? Is it for profit? Or actually is it a mixture of a range of things? You know, there's something about just happening in the local knowledge there somewhere, I think.
Yeah, there's anything. Yeah, how would that apply? I'm thinking about Osprey Town Council, because obviously I'm not an Osprey Town Councillor, rather outside the area. But where you've got members of the Shropshire Council who would be consulted on this, and it's an event the town council are putting on, so they're not making the topic. How would that sit?
And that's an example of how complex it can be, isn't it? I guess ultimately, as with a lot of these things, if there's a delegation to us as officers to use our judgment, I think using that judgment in consultation with the local members might be the best way to do it.
Yeah, that sounds fine. If that could be included in your draft, because we're having a draft again here, aren't we? Steve Davenport.
Yeah, just in my experience, Gary's team do an amazing job anyway. And when they are unsure on a final decision, they do come to the relevant cabinet maker for them to make a decision. And I don't think there's ever been a problem as far as I know.
No, but we're changing it, aren't we? By doing what we're doing now, it's changing what happens. Yes, Roger.
I echo your thoughts, Chairman. It's just to give officers the opportunity of saying no. If we don't put it in here, then officers will have to abide by the protocol and charge. At least if they talk to the local member and then make a view, it's an informed decision, but there is some member input into it. So yeah.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, if that could, if we could put that in our recommendation, that'd be good. Julian?
I mean, I suppose I'm just concerned that there's consistency, and there's a worry, isn't there, if you just sort of, if it's on a nod a week from the local member or the parish or whatever, there's a risk in in that situation, somebody's going to challenge a decision and ask for their money back, or whatever it might be after an event, you know, or they got it for free. So we clearly need some guide. You need some guidance.
Or maybe you need members who are not from that area. Maybe in a little subcommittee, maybe.
The trouble may be in the sheer amount of applications that come through on a yearly basis. That could be quite a bone there.
Yeah, a contention. And I think that the thing is that we have to be able to pay whatever it costs us. We have to put that money back in the system. We can't be out of pocket, especially given circumstances at the moment. So is there anything else anybody wants to ask? It did mention in the recommendations that the group advised on a feasible timeline for a revised schedule of charges to be implemented. What would be realistic? Dean, if you want to come in at any point, do tell me, won't you? What would be realistic, Mark?
In what aspect, time?
Yes, it says here, a feasible timeline for a revised schedule.
Gary, I think really that the grey areas could be kind of decision on that, and we could perhaps introduce further options. You know, I'm thinking about the current historic market events, for example. Where do they sit? You know, and whether try and find out whether something is totally charitable or is really properly owned is one thing, but for those regular community events, we can happen to Oster Street, for example, you know, Students' Day, then we suddenly start saying, well, we could do some money.
And just, could you do it in stages, perhaps? And the ones that are obvious, you could go ahead with first, and then look at the others separately, and then it's not holding anything back because you can't proceed with it. Is everybody happy with this, that we proceed as stated? Anybody not happy? Oh, Dean, you're smiling. Okay.
Can I just clarify?
You can.
So maybe, Chair, in final wording, it's something along that, I'm picking up on Councillor Lee's comment. Is there an assumption that there will be a charge unless a case has been made and accepted that? That gives that kind of clarity, but it points people into a default around the charge that then a case be made that it's not for profit. Is that helpful, possibly?
That's very helpful, thank you. Have you got all that, Sarah? Yeah. Daniel?
Yes, sorry. I just ask a question, really. Okay, is this report going to Cabinet next? Or is it done? Is it trusted? Is it what's its journey?
I think it probably could do. I think that unless you want the grey areas and more options on the table,
I mean, do you intend to? I mean, is this?
Yeah, I think that's the intention. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just in terms of efficiency of process and making sure that your recommendations get heard. I would suggest rather than just taking this to Cabinet, a far more efficient way would be for Gary to build your recommendations and just make a note to say that, you know, you've made these recommendations, we've incorporated these changes. That then goes to Cabinet, and then that fulfills, that makes sure that you're heard in this process.
Yeah, but I do think we can take it in two parts, or it could be addressed in two parts with the obvious one as stated before. Thank you for those, Mark. So we're all happy with that, and again, no? In that case, we will now move on to item 10, place overview committee work programme. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Chair. We did intend. Sorry, Roger.
It's okay.
So you, Chairman, after you, but I just wanted to come in on the future work programme, which is where you were taking us there.
Oh, okay. There's a draft work programme here in front of me. We'll try to arrange a planning session. Unfortunately, our chair went and caught COVID, so that didn't quite happen. We have been busy consulting with directors and with portfolio holders on the programme, and I've been working with officers to not so much identify priorities, but just ask when would be an appropriate time to bring various topics to the committee. A lot of although this committee has a really wide remit, it does seem to focus quite a lot on highways and built environment matters, and obviously these are all quite interconnected and interrelated and feed off each other, and there's a lot of work underway in terms of developing policy on a lot of areas that are going to be coming. So what I've tried to do here is to try and marry up topics within meetings so that there is some form of coherence with the topics in there. There's another, I just wanted to bring your attention to a topic as well around clean and healthy rivers, and this is a work in progress that's been happening in the background. I was approached by Councillor Halliday with a proposal to bring this topic to this committee, and Councillors Halliday and Mosley and myself, and in conjunction with the chair, have been working to pull together some terms of reference to bring to this committee for a piece of work looking into this. We've suggested that we do this work within the body of the committee rather than the task and finish group, because it's the opinion of the members who are drafting this that it needs to be done in public. I think a significant element of that is around bringing the Environment Agency and other partners, Severn Trent Water, into a meeting, and they're keen to attend, on a stress, to provide that public accountability, which I think is an opportunity really, because we don't that often, apart from Kia and WSP, have the opportunity for outside partners to be held accountable. So that's in progress. I've just penciled it into the work programme at the moment, because obviously it's down to you whether you want to proceed with this work. I would suggest for this one that you wait until we produce something before you decide whether to go ahead with it or not. But other than that, this is there in front of you. It's open to you. It's your work programme. It's up to you what you want to put on it. So I hand this draft over to you.
Yes, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I did send a message to the scrutiny officer, and I copied you in this morning, Chair. And it is a little bit parochial, but it has repercussions for a number of different places in Shropshire. And I'll read out one paragraph of the letter that went to the scrutiny officer, and it says that we would therefore like to request that the scrutiny committee investigate how the process of traffic safety concerns are managed, both in this parish council and other parishes, and investigate why promises made have been unmet. There's a long history with this one, going back 2-3 years, and in the end a formal complaint was made to Shropshire Council, and the reply that went back to the parish council, which in essence said it isn't possible, we will not pick up a formal complaint. They can't complain to the ombudsman because it isn't allowed. They came to this one because under the old local joint committees, it was possible to refer parish councillors via them to a scrutiny committee. And what they're suggesting is that this issue here, because it is there, and what it is, it's about a traffic scheme in a particular parish, which went into an EOI 14 months ago. That's when you apply for SIL, you put that in. Went in 14 months ago, and it went into a black hole. Complaints have been made to various officers within the council about it, and it's still not gone anywhere. The parish concerned has actually employed their own consultant to actually come forward with what they consider a viable scheme, using their own neighbourhood SIL funding to do it, put it in as part of this EOI, and the reply that's come back from Shropshire Council is, we will prefer you to withdraw this, and we will use our own consultants to progress it. There was a scheme there put forward, which was by a commercial organisation. The person employed worked for this authority in highways up till about 18 months ago, when they left and went to work for this organisation. So it is particular to this, but I'm picking up the particular paragraph there because there is some concern, I think, in a number of parishes about the SIL and how that is deployed, how they make the applications to actually use the local funding, marry it up with their neighbourhood funding. So it's all that in it, and I'm suggesting that if it could go on to the September one, I've got a lot of information here I can supply to Daniel, and he can sort of sieve what is thought needed, and maybe send a note or around the other parishes to see if it is a prevalent problem or just a particular one. But I think it does need to look at scrutinising to see what is happening in this process. And I'll pick out that paragraph and I'll say it again, because I've got things here when the officers were going to come out to do a site visit in February 2021. We're now in July, July 2022. So there is an email trail there, but it's this paragraph. Therefore, I'd like to request that the scrutiny committee investigate how the process of traffic safety concerns are managed, both in this parish and other parishes, and investigate why promises have not been made. Maybe promises may be a bit strong, but actually look at the process to see how it could be done and to inform parishes what is happening. Thank you, Chairman.
When you spoke to me about this, I said I have concerns, obviously, because if every parish council had an issue and we have to look at every parish council and came up with something like this, then we couldn't do the work at all. I think if there are overlying principles, I think the committee could look at it. And I don't think it would be a bad thing, actually, to see what parish and town councils are saying about this individually, and collect that information and then look at it again, make a decision. Yes, Dean.
Thank you, Chair. This isn't.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. This isn't a specific highways issue. It will cut across both myself and Ed. And Ed, I believe, is back on the road again, home to Shropshire from the LGA conference. However, I can't comment on the individual case that Councillor Evans has raised. I don't know what it is. I don't know the ins and outs of it. However, there is a more fundamental question that I can see about how we access SIL funding for road safety schemes and how we prioritise and bring those forwards. And I think that a piece of work at some point in this council year, a piece of work to look at that process and how much that is prioritised internally would be quite welcome. I would welcome scrutiny's attention on that as well, to suggest from my side ways forward to help get the money out the door and spent on projects that that communities need. I can't speak for the planning side of it, but certainly from my side of it, I think we would welcome scrutiny's input.
Okay, Roger.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it general, and it may need more than one scrutiny, or scrutiny may wish to put up a task and finish group or whatever. Yeah. But I think the initial investigation, if we could do that in September, decide how it's going to be done, what's wanted, and it could come back later. I echo what Councillor Carroll has said. It is a big issue, but it's just trying to explore it and trying to find a way through.
Is that a reasonable timescale, September, Dean, Mark? Because I'm just thinking that the school holidays and all of that.
Yeah, we basically, if we discount August because of the number of officers who will understandably not be available, we're talking probably, 5 weeks. I think that is a little tight. Is there a meeting in October or November?
I can't be able to make one if there isn't.
Well, it's not my place to tell you when to meet or what to put on your
I was in Roger. November the 10th.
So you Chairman, November is the one after September, but it may be that October. Yeah, October is fine. Well, I just don't want it to disappear into the.
No, I just hope it's not when I'm on holiday. We can go for October if that's all right.
So you want me to just basically you want me to go fishing during the summer and see what I can find. That'd be a pleasure.
I hope you've got a good role.
I would say that Mark may have some more views on timing, but from my perspective, I think September would be too early. But Mark, what do you think?
Yeah. Okay. Mark, you happy with that?
Yeah.
Time scales?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've also got other people waiting.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Daniel, what are you doing, Jeff? Go on, Jeff, I'll let you go.
Thank you. But I just want to pick up on the topic of clean and healthy rivers. The objective is to look at the impact on biodiversity of the rivers and the health of those who swim in the river. Can we not open that up a bit more to places such as Ellesmere? We've got MERS, where we encourage people to swim because there is no swimming pool. We have regions encouraging people to go paddle boarding in them. We have triathlons in them. We're letting people swim. Let people swim. And half the time we've got blue algae. The river is the water quality is very, very bad. And I'd like to maybe just incorporate that as well, because I think we're encouraging people to swim in water that is virtually unhealthy and unsafe.
Alderford test theirs regularly and they just stop people swimming while they're being treated on that.
Which is in the project.
Environmental health. Yeah. Mark.
So just to come in, Chair, I think in terms of probably in terms of objectives, it doesn't fully relate to the whole picture here, does it? But, so I think this is a piece of work that will draw in water companies, Severn Trent, Welsh Water, will draw in the Environment Agency, and will draw in environmental health in one way or another.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll also get into, you know, runoff from farms and phosphates and things like that. Lots of things that are affecting water quality and river quality just beyond the kind of public health bits you mentioned. Some of them are actually, you know, prohibiting development. Climate catchment is one we talk a lot about. So, you know, it'd be interesting to see where that piece of work goes. But I think the assurance there is let's approach it with a broad approach.
And I was saying I'd like to think that we can get the minister for said things here. Said things. Definitely bones. Hopefully we can get the minister here. I think I'm sure we can lobby MPs, our MPs to put pressure on them.
In relation to this topic.
Yeah, I've still got Julian waiting patiently.
Thank you. I mean, just on that one, clearly the wording suggests it's about the Severn, and clearly we're talking about all water courses. We'll understand that, and that's great. Then my question was just in terms of it, is there an opportunity or a need to look at the outcomes of the inspection, the local plan inspection next month? I don't know what the timescale is on that. I don't know what happens next.
The first one is it's specific, it's not for public and everything. So.
But sort of my question is, you know, presumably at some stage the inspector will have something to say. What's the process that happens to whatever?
Next year though.
Yeah, I would suggest, Chair, that probably November would be a good time for an interim, kind of from what we know at that point in time. There's no reason why we couldn't give you a mid review. We won't have had formal responses then, but we can kind of touch base on things because you will raise questions, of course.
I can't scrutinise this. There's nothing to scrutinise, so
no,
I think that makes a good point. It should be a briefing probably.
Yeah, exactly. Very briefly, and if there's any exceptional items that are around.
Dean, are you still there? Dean?
I am still here, Chair. I disappeared off camera because you went off of highway. But is there something you wanted, Chair?
It was. We're talking about rivers and environmental things. Excuse me, I'm choking. Yes, we're wondering if what was I asking? Sorry.
This is around plan documents. Yes,
Let's do the planning process. I've lost the thread now. I do apologise, everybody. I explained
Chair, if I can, local plan isn't me, and rivers would be Councillor Nellens.
Okay, goodbye then, Dean. Sorry about that.
One of the, with regards to planning, it's not in this agenda yet because there's nothing to propose. Both Tracy Dark and Councillor Potter have both raised the topic of supplementary planning documents, and obviously these will start to be produced once the once the local plan has been endorsed, and then the officers will start moving on to the supplementary plan documents, and that is very much something that you get your teeth into. There's nothing to do yet, and I'm just having conversations with officers to get an idea of when stuff might be happening. I doubt it'll be within the context of this year, if I'm honest, but just keep that in mind that these will start to come through, and your input would be vital for those.
Thank you. Yes,
Depending on what they're opening up.
Steve, I'm sorry, I missed you.
Going to bring Sil back on as well. I don't mean Sil.
I'm still on the same topic. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I just wanted to comment on what Councillor Elmer said, that it isn't just a 7. I think we made that clear in the work done so far. It is county-wide and all river, of course. You mentioned the MEAs and Elsmere, obviously very important, but the main issues we're talking about here are the combined sewage outlets into the rivers and the farm runoff. So I think we're talking about slightly different issues. It will be winding the project, I think, to do with natural lakes. I don't know what you think, Daniel, having done
water.
Yeah, but it's still water rather than running water. I don't think sewage outlets go into those, do they? All right. And we also did touch on planning, I think, as well. The impact on planning.
Okay, anything else anybody wants to add, or are you happy with the work programme as it stands otherwise? Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, just in November, you've got things like the draft local cycling walking infrastructure plan, transport plan. I wonder, one of the things that concerns me at the moment is a lack of action on school streets and the 20-mile-per-hour limits outside schools. It doesn't seem to be happening very much at all. I know other councillors are concerned about this as well. And I wonder whether at that point we could have a report back about what's happening on school streets and 20-mile-per-hour limits.
Steve's just popped up, so I think he wants to say something.
There is a programme. I've tentatively seen we've been working very hard on it. I've tentatively seen the programme, which I think covers all the schools where it's feasible and would add to safety within this and the next financial year, I believe is correct to say. But I'm happy for us to share that with you at one of your meetings or as a briefing note in between, if that can be put down as an action.
Yeah, this is actually, believe it or not, this is a topic that Performance Management Screening Committee have picked up, and we're even into a task and finish group. This is around safe access to schools. It's not just around the 20-mile-an-hour limits, it's also the infrastructure that puts in place within those schools. But also, crucially, it's my understanding as well that we've recruited a school travel officer as well now. So it's that individual work in terms of encouraging behaviour change on a school-by-school basis to really get down into the sort of the detail of arranging these things rather than the grand strategy. So I think it's quite a nuanced topic there to sort of bring. I think that will be thrashed out within that task and finish group to report back. So it will be covered, but it will be covered by this committee.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else, or yes, Steve?
Yes, I just wanted to mention Sil again. I don't mean Sil looking at it again. Is how we get it spent, but is it fit for purpose? Do we scrap it and go back to 106? Just to 106. It will be going so long, everybody struggles to get money out of it. Is it fit for purpose?
Mark.
If I can come in, interestingly, the whole thing has been flagged for review by government at the moment, and they're talking about potentially consolidating all into a single infrastructure levy. And we're told, Councillor Davenport, that guidance might be with us later this year, so maybe if we hold our powder and watch that space and keep an eye on that chair. It was supposed to be part of the levelling up review and as an accompanying planning reform set of measures, which got kind of not kicked down the road, but when the Secretary of State changed and Michael Gove committee wanted to rework that, so it all got put back 6 months. So we're told this autumn we should be getting some new guidance.
Okay, I accept that. I've heard that's happening, but not all councils do Sil anyway, and we have got we could do this between. Of course, we've got to wait and see what happens. But actually, if we weren't waiting, would we take a fresh look at to see whether it's fit for purpose. And I think it is personally.
But yeah, one for communities, I'm afraid that one. I think that housing and.
Well, they don't do anything.
So, can we vote this through, please? With somebody propose work programme? I'll propose it. Second count. Thank you. Everybody happy? Yes. Next meeting will be on Thursday, the 29th of September at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Just asked the live event to be.
Okay, I just want to comment before everybody goes.
Pretty much, so we should.